Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So yesterday was pretty crazy. Starting off in the very early morning, there were some really exciting spoilers. And those exciting spoilers just kept coming and coming, so it pushed back other types of episodes that I had been working on. One of those episodes was my most recent episode on runes, so if you want to find out what runes are, go and check that episode out. And one other episode that was pushed back is this one, which you're watching right now. Now, like most of these episodes before spoiler season, a quick spoiler warning before we jump into things. This episode involves a few spoiler cards from Kaldheim, so if you don't want to see those, then stop watching and maybe go watch a deck tech. With all that said, let's jump into it. So this episode is actually somewhat of a continuation of a previous episode where I talked about the one deck that I can't get right. Now, if you haven't seen that episode yet, this episode will still make sense, but I highly recommend after you watch this episode, checking that one out because it's got more ideas and more cards for this type of deck. Regardless, the concept for this episode that I can't get right is an all creature types Lord's Tribal deck. Now, we'll get to what exactly that means here in a bit, but basically the takeaway from that episode is this. As much as I love the concept of the deck, there just is a piece that is missing and a new card needs to come out that actually fits that role. And you know what? That final piece very well might have just come out in Kaldheim. So the card that I'm actually most excited about from this set so far is Maskwood Nexus. It's an artifact that costs 4 and it says creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. And by paying 3 and tapping it, you create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling, so it's every creature type. This card does exactly what I need, making every creature in my deck on the field wherever they're at, all creature types, all the time. The second part, where I can pay 3 and tap it to make a 2/2 blue shapeshifter with Changeling, is just a bonus. Again, the important part is essentially that all creatures in your deck now have Changeling. So now let's talk about the deck concept and how this card fits in. So first up, let's go through what I'm referring to when I talk about a creature lord. Now there can be different kinds of lords in Magic, but the main type of one that I'm referring to are ones like Voice of the Woods. This is one of my favorite cards from my childhood, and I may or may not have had an intruder alarm deck built around this, but that's a different topic for a different day. Regardless, Voice of the Woods is a 2/2 elf that costs 3 green. It has tap 5 untapped elves you control, put a 7/7 green elemental creature token with trample onto the battlefield. So normally for this card to be effective, you would have to run it in an elves dedicated deck. An elf tribal isn't exactly what I want. I want this lord to work with other lords in tandem. And that's where Maskwood Nexus is huge. Because now all my creatures, no matter what they are also elves. And that includes those 7/7 elementals that I'm making too. And those elves and those elementals now are also vampires. So a lord like Captivating Vampire is also fantastic in this deck. It's a 2/2 for 1 black, and it says other vampires you control get +1/+1, but on top of that, tap 5 untapped vampires you control, gain control of target creature, it becomes a vampire addition to its other types. So this is an anthem that lets us tap our creatures to steal other creatures. And again, not only does it make them a vampire, but when we control that creature, it's also going to have Changeling. So that new vampire Changeling that we stole can help us make more elementals or steal other creatures, or help us draw cards with a zombie Lady of Scrolls. Because a zombie has tap an untap wizard you control, draw a card. And again, with Maskwood Nexus in play, it's just tap a creature, draw a card. There are a lot of lords out there, and they can help us do some really cool things. One can even help us counter our opponent's spells with Lull Mage Mentor. It has tap 7 untap merfolk you control, counter target spell, and whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may put a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token onto the battlefield. So basically we can counter spells, and while we're doing that, we also get more merfolk that also have Changeling thanks to Maskwood Nexus. Lords that increase our creature count are obviously really important in this deck. And also keep in mind with these types of lord effects, you don't need haste to tap them right away. Okay, there are some exceptions obviously, but one that is absolutely fantastic in this deck that has that exception is Mirror Galvanizer. This is a somewhat different type of lord than the others, but it still has an anthem effect for mirror that we control, and we can pay 1 and tap it to untap each other mirror we control. So this buffs our creatures, but more importantly, for 1 mana each turn, we can untap all of our creatures. Because again, thanks to Maskwood Nexus, all of our creatures are elves and vampires and wizards and merfolk and even Mir. And being able to tap all of our creatures again for our lord effects is huge. Now, next up I want to talk about how Maskwood Nexus brings about new possibilities. One of the cards in the One Deck I Can't Get Right episode that I really highlighted was Arcane Adaptation. Basically, it's a lesser Maskwood Nexus in that you're picking one creature type. So all your creatures, no matter where they're at, are that creature type in addition to their other types, but they don't really have Changeling like Maskwood Nexus basically gives them. So this can be effective, but again, you've got to really pick one and stick to it. Now, there are other cards that can help out as well, like a Mirror Entity, but again, Maskwood Nexus is an absolute game changer. For example, it makes Turn Timber Ranger a fantastic include in this kind of a deck. It has whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Turn Timber Ranger. So because of Maskwood Nexus, that wolf is not only a wolf, but it's also an elf and a vampire, oh, and an ally. So your wolf ally comes into play and triggers your Turn Timber Ranger, which puts another wolf ally into play, which triggers your Turn Timber Ranger, and you see where this is going. Infinite tokens in an infinitely large Turn Timber Ranger. And luckily for us, this is a May effect, so we can stop whenever we need to. Because if it wasn't a May and we didn't have a sacrifice outlet, then it would be a stalemate because this would just keep going and going and going and no one would be able to stop it. Anyways, another great inclusion in this deck thanks to Maskwood Nexus would be the first Sliver. It's a Sliver that has Cascade and it says Sliver spells you have Cascade. So since all of our creature spells are slivers now, every single one of our creature spells has Cascade. That's an incredibly powerful thing and can really help us take over the game. But the budget for this deck might just have to go up a tad to include this one since it's around $10. Maybe that'll just be a reasonable upgrade that I trade for someday. Regardless, another new possibility is actually another spoiler from this set with Magda Brazen Outlaw. She has other dwarves you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token and sacrifice 5 treasures, search your library for an artifact or dragon card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. I really can't describe how perfect Magda is for this kind of a deck. First off, before you even have Maskwood Nexus, if you happen to get 5 treasures, you can just sack those and immediately get it. And then once you've got Maskwood Nexus out, whenever you tap any of your creatures for whatever reason, including your lord effects, you're making a treasure per each creature. And then you can sacrifice 5 of those treasures to go get a dragon from your deck, which again, all of your creatures are dragons, so whatever creature you want. So Magda can give you a ton of mana, she can pump all your creatures, so you can search for the actual piece that you need, and she can search for any creature in your deck once you're set up. Yeah, for 1 in a red, that's a fantastic include. But the crucial piece is that you obviously need Maskwood Nexus for this deck to work. Now, outside of Magda being a possible tutor for Maskwood Nexus, we're going to need to run a lot of tutors in this deck. Unfortunately, many tutors are very expensive, but a simple tutor like Diabolic Tutor will do just fine. But like Magda, tutors that can get the card right into play can be even more effective, like Whir of Invention. It says search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Another option that we get, because we're going to be running 5 colors with this deck, is Wargate. It says search your library for a permanent card with converted mana cost X or less, put it in play, then shuffle your library. Again, this deck is going to revolve heavily around one card, so we need ways to get it out, ways to get it back, ways to protect it, and so on and so forth. But one decision that definitely has to be made beforehand is what commander's actually going to lead this deck. Now, there are a couple of options and directions you can go. One option might be to go in a tribal direction like an Dragon that benefits you heavily once you're set up. But again, I think the more important part is being able to actually get to the Maskwood Nexus. If you're not set up, then the deck doesn't really work. You just have a bunch of elves and vampires and merfolk that can't help each other out. So I think my pick for right now is Golos Tireless Pilgrim. Golos helps us out in 3 ways. First off, it's 5 colors, which obviously this deck needs to be 5 colors to get all the lords that we want. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, when it enters the battlefield, we can search our library for a land card, put that card onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle our library. And there actually is a land that can tutor for an artifact with Inventor's Fair. It has pay 4 and tap and sacrifice it to search our library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into our hand, then shuffle our library. Activates ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts. So there is a restriction. We do need 2 more artifacts on top of Golos, but we can get that done. And the final way that Golos can help is obviously its activation. Pay 2 in Wooburg, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn without paying their mana cost. So Golos can help us cast things off the top of our library for free, like our lords, or a tutor, or even Maskwood Nexus if we hit it. Now, obviously this is not perfect, but it's the best idea that I've got for now. What I'm really hoping to see is a legendary creature version of Maskwood Nexus that's all 5 colors. It doesn't even need that pay 3 tap effect, okay? I don't need it. I just need the first part. Now, is that a little pie in the sky to hope for a Changeling commander to happen? Maybe. But for now, I can dream and try to make do with what I've got. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, Thanks again, and have a good one.